Are you guys able to hear me better now? Wonderful. So I just need to hold the mic a little bit closer to me. So we held the demonstration as TANTEC because TANTEC was the entity that we were trying to target because they were contracted to contracted to help remove the bike lanes on Young University and Bloor. I think it was specifically Bloor that they were contracted for. And for this protest, it was TANTEC, but for the next protest, it might be a different institution that was trying to harm us, trying to do something that hurts society, and particularly youth. And it could be an educational institution, it could be Queen's Park, it could be the provincial government. And we need to have the ability to go up to these people and have our voices heard. We need to be able to go there, demonstrate, show them that the community does not support what they're doing. That's the essence of peaceful protest. It's a constitutionally enshrined right in our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And it is especially important to us as youth. In Fridays for Future Toronto, so many of us are under 18, we don't have the right to vote. I'm not under 18, but a lot of the other folks are. So we actually need, even more so than other people, to rely on demonstrations and protests to have our voices heard. Similar to how a lot of us can vote. There's youth participation in politics is an issue, or specifically the lack of youth participation. And I don't blame our youth. Participating in politics is complicated, and it takes time to learn how to participate in informal processes, and being able to show up to a protest, to a demonstration, being able to organize something, that is obviously, there's a lot that goes into organizing, but at the same time, it's not something that's gate kept. You don't have to rely on anyone's approval, or at least for now you don't have to, and hopefully we will manage to protect our charter right, and hopefully we will not let this proposed bylaw pass. So there's still a couple other points I wanted to raise. A lot of our members marched alongside protesters who are protesting the genocide and against Palestinians. And we know that a major part of why this proposed bylaw is being pushed against what we want is to silence us, is to silence Palestinian voices and the voices of other marginalized groups. And we're not going to stand up for that. We think that our voices deserve to be heard. I would like to talk about some student protesters who protested in front of educational institutions, in front of schools, who I'm really proud of. About a year ago from today, Alberta passed a draconian anti-trans law that targeted youth, that targeted children in schools. And what did students in Edmonton do? They walked out of their schools. They decided to protest in front of schools because it was schools who were harming those children. And so, in our name, in the name of youth, and in the name of children, they're saying that it's to protect us, it's to keep us safe by banning protests around educational institutions. What happens when educational institutions fail their students? We need to have the ability to protest against that.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you. Such inspiring words, truly. That's my place. There we go. All this paper. Our next speaker is going to speak on how restricting rights, particularly the right to protest, affects our most marginalized populations, and why protesters and protests need to be defended. Jessica Gadea is a lawyer with the legal clinic at the Lincoln Alexander School of Law at Toronto Metropolitan University. And we're speaking to you now. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. All right, let me know if anybody can't hear and I need to move a little bit closer to the mic.
mouth, Jess.
That's better?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm here, Seema couldn't be here today and asked me to speak. And I'm going to be speaking from my experiences as a community lawyer who focuses on social justice in this city. I really appreciate the opening remarks when the charter was spoken about as a tool of the Canadian state. It's part of the Constitution, and the Constitution, together with a lot of other legislation, has tried to control and suppress Indigenous peoples and rights for a very long time. But we know that the First Peoples of this land have an inherent right to exist and to resist anywhere across Turtle Island. And will continue to do so and overcome attempts of suppression. Because I want to be very clear that legislation like this, bylaws like this that limit protest, they are anti-Indigenous, they are anti-Black, they are anti-queer, they are anti-houseless folks, and this particular bylaw proposal is anti-Palestinian. Before this rally, I spoke to a couple of legal observers who are people that are out on the front lines of demonstrations every week. And they told me a few interesting things that I want to share. They told me that they have documented over 30 concussions and several fractured bones and broken bones, all caused by Toronto police at protests in the last year and a half alone. Shame. Despite there being over 100 arrests of protesters at Palestinian demonstrations, which is, the arrests are used to justify that violence, there have been 0 criminal convictions that have come out of those protests. Yeah, that's good. And it's also another tactic that's used together with bubble legislation like this to suppress our voices and to try to scare us. The proposed bylaws unjustifiably limit our civil rights and will work to silence our voices, squash our social movements, and increase state power to regulate dissent and to use violence to control and punish those of us fighting for the freedom and liberation of all peoples. Shame. Since the inception of the Canadian and American states on Turtle Island, suppression of Indigenous and Black communities' rights to free expression and association has been used to marginalize struggles for freedom and equity. Today, we see similar tactics, suppressing the activism of Palestinians and their allies who demand that Canada stop its complicity in genocide. The real-life impact of laws like this that limit protest become part of a web of intersecting systems of oppression. We only have to look to the US to see these impacts of suppressing activism when that activism challenges authorities and the state. Demonstrations, actions, sit-ins, rallies, and other forms of protest are key tools for social change and for keeping each other safe, especially those of us most harmed by state and corporate powers. When our community members are shot by Toronto police on a mental health call, we go to the streets and we protest. Yeah, this happened last summer, just a few blocks from here, and it happens over and over again. When the city comes to displace our houseless neighbors, offering dangerous or non-existent shelter spaces, year after year, we mobilize. When the province closes our safe consumption sites, leaving our friends to die, we hit the streets. And when governments are complicit in genocide here or abroad, in Palestine, Sudan, and Congo, we resist. Protest is a way to hold our institutions accountable, and not something that institutions should be shielded from. Protest is a way to develop community around these integral issues and pressure our institutions to center people over profits. The real-life impact of laws like this criminalize and brutalize us for our resistance to oppression. The Supreme Court of Canada has affirmed our right to peaceful assembly multiple times to protect our right to gather and come together for collective expression on important issues that impact all of us. Yet, our efforts are met with state suppression, and this legislation will only heighten police brutality and increase the over-criminalization of protesters. We see police come in droves, especially at rallies for Palestine, where they unnecessarily bring out the emergency task force, the PSRT, and the mounted units. This, together with bubble legislation, misleads the public. It creates a false image of danger and of a public safety issue. And this is a historically used tactic of suppression against marginalized groups. The legal observers I spoke to, they reminded me that what happens in this city also affects our people globally. Toronto is home to many industry corporations, like mining companies that extract and exploit worldwide. We are home to bank headquarters that invest in war and exploitation. Institutions that illegally sell stolen Palestinian land are in Toronto. And there's several other places where people in this city do and should protest. The impact of bubble bylaws that limit protest is to keep Indigenous, Black, and Brown struggles out of white and wealthy neighborhoods. That is the impact, and that's what this bubble legislation is going to do. These so-called vulnerable institutions that the city keeps talking about, that the proposed bylaws are aiming to protect our places of power and of wealth. And when these institutions oppress communities and abuse their power, people have a right to express themselves, assemble together, and protest outside their doors, on the streets, and any public space in the city. Thank you.
And I want to thank, that was our final speaker. I want to thank all of our speakers for coming out today. Can we give a round of applause for all of our speakers? And of course, I want to thank the counselors that have signed our birthday card, Counselor Moyes, Counselor Bravo, Counselor Perks, Counselor Fletcher, and we're going to make sure that that card gets out there, and hopefully we can get all 25 counselors and the mayor signing that to say that they will protect our charter freedoms to protest. And of course, the last thank you I want to give is to all of you. I want to thank all of you for coming out in the middle of a day on Thursday to celebrate the charter, to recognize our charter rights and freedoms, and continue to recognize the importance to protest. So thank you all. Give a round of applause for all of yourselves. Awesome. Well, thank you all for being here. We got cupcakes, and I think, is that music happening? I think we're about to have a little song going on. What song? 22nd, come out, protest, it'll be a great time. Get some cupcakes. For media, if you want to speak to any of the speakers, we're glad to do interviews with speakers. Thank you all for coming out. Happy Charter Day! Great.